Welcome, David Lee King, to the Shaping EDU series on best pandemic practices, capturing the evolving new now and learning. Are we there yet? Delighted to have you as the Digital Services Director at Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library, and as a longtime colleague looking over best practices in learning. My understanding is that you, early on, well before the pandemic was even on anybody's radar, had a digital library that served your rural population. That was in place for a long time. What advantages does that provide for you and the users of the Topeka Shawnee Library?
Well, as far as digital content anyway, we were already set up that way. So, we subscribe to Overdrive and Hoopla and a bunch of databases. We have some video-based learning products like LinkedIn Learning that we subscribe to. So that type of content we already have. Our website is set up, like you said, a digital library. We call it our digital branch. We were still churning out content like blog posts and social media posts, that kind of thing. Doing videos, story time, but also more informational type things already. So we knew how to do that. So when we shut down, we still had content that people could check out. We still had things for people to do at the library, so to speak. The difficulty for us is that since we're sort of suburban to rural in the county we serve, it was great for the people who lived within the city limits and had access to, good broadband. But our lower income users in the city, and then even upper middle class, et cetera, people out in the county don't necessarily have great access to good broadband signal. Even if they have, huge house on 3 acres of land, they might not have broadband just because nobody wants to dig out there for one house. So that's a challenge. I think the stats I usually see are about 2/3 of our population have good access to broadband. But that leaves, a good third of people out of the loop. So, and especially since everything shut down, during a school year, that was really important for kids and their parents, just because those kids were sent home, but they were still having to do school online. How do you turn your homework in online if you don't have access to broadband? So we did a few different things with some more mobile Wi-Fi hotspot type things. We used those on our bookmobiles. So we parked some of our bookmobiles in some lower income areas of the county, so people could drive up next to it, turn in their homework.
It sounds like there were some opportunities there that you were able to grab because you already had a digital library in place. Let's back up one step. Talk about the formation of the digital library there at the library that you're with, and then how having that in place actually helped you and your library users cope as much as they could with the pandemic situation.
Oh, sure. Well, I guess backing up to when I started here in 2006, I was partly brought in to the library to build a digital branch. They had, a few years before I was hired, if you know Stephen Abram, I think, he was invited in to do a staff day and apparently really sort of freaked out the library just by showing them how far behind they were.
Always a good way to get people's attention, right?
Yeah.
Look how far behind you are. Now let's do something.
Right. That's right. And so they're like, okay, well, we need to build a digital branch, not just have a website that, has our hours and, that kind of stuff on it. What does that mean? And at the time I was starting to be really focused in that area and live fairly close. So they invited me in for an interview and hired me, and we started building that and did pretty quick. So I was able to help the library pretty quickly get up to speed with, so we need to do chat reference. We need to do more blog post kind of news stories that you can comment on. We need to get our feet wet with social media, that kind of thing. Just reaching out beyond our digital walls, so to speak. So I helped build that, got all that in place, with a bunch of help from our staff, of course. And been doing that since then, really. So yeah, when the pandemic hit, we were already set up. We knew how to write a blog post and send it out on social media so our customers can still say, oh, the library is still doing things, rather than just having crickets for 3 months until we decided, oh, we need to do something again.
Have you seen any things where before the pandemic you were dreaming of them but had no idea, no hope that they'd be implemented, that suddenly became possible and actually implemented because pandemic circumstances forced the issue?
I mean, we started new services that we're still doing, like curbside pickup, still doing it. We started it during the pandemic. For us, with that one, thankfully, we had a small sort of a cafe extension / meeting room that's connected to our building that we just removed the tables from and stuffed all of our holds into during the pandemic. And it has great parking lot access. So it's like, ta-da, we have a great place for curbside pickup. And since then, we've had to move it back into the building and do it the real way, but still going strong. We started a home delivery service that we'd never done, never done before. Before the pandemic, we were doing it for like shut-ins, people who couldn't get out of their house for one reason or another. We were delivering to people's homes. That was sort of a special service we were doing for people. We'd have to get like we can do this to you kind of form. We can do this for you thing. But now, if I wanted to have books delivered to my house, I could. Just by saying deliver it to my house instead of deliver it here. And that's for anybody. And that's going strong enough that we're trying to figure out, well, do we need to buy more vehicles? Can we ramp it up? Do we still need bookmobiles if we are delivering to people's houses? Just thinking through that process. And that's because of the pandemic.
Are there any things that you discovered in the process of training other people that you wish you'd known ahead of time? You can save people by saying, oh, make sure you do this.
Well, 2 things I think I can think of. One, just assuming people know the same level of technology that you know, or the same type of technology that you know. For example, we have staff using our meeting rooms and they're like, this microphone was too loud or too quiet, or it was cutting out, and we'll find out maybe on our end that we didn't replace a battery. Should have done that. Or they're using a lapel mic, and the ones we have are pretty directional. So, they'll have it off over here. It's like, it was noisy because it's rustling around, or nobody could hear them. Well, it's because you have it over here. Or you were holding the handheld microphone way down here and it was feeding back instead of holding it where you're supposed to, so it doesn't. Or, well, there's a volume control on the control panel on the podium. Didn't you remember that? No, because we probably didn't train them on that, because they've started in the last 6 months, and the last training we did for that was 2 years ago, or whatever. So that, and then also for us is just using the room in a bigger way than we're used to normally. So especially towards the end of the pandemic, when we had the room installed, but we weren't going back to, we were still spread out in meetings, I'll say. So we were doing our board meetings in like 2/3 of that auditorium space instead of in one of our normal meeting rooms, and just trying to figure out how to get everybody seen on the screen, how to get everybody heard, both virtually and in the space itself, was a bit of a challenge at times.
What have you learned that you want to share with others, and what are the things that keep you going at this point in terms of a new now and learning?
Well, what I want to share with others, and I've done this kind of class before, but basic change management stuff, it's all still the same. Change is okay. It's painful at the time, but ultimately can be a really good thing. And there are steps you can take to do it. Just sort of plow forth and see what happens, and then make adjustments along the way, rather than waiting and saying, oh, this is the perfect best way for me to go, because you'll never move. It's much better to start and then adjust. And that's sort of basic change management, right? Do one thing, look around, adapt, and keep going. You'll be in a much better place, I think, and have had a journey along the way.
David, thank you so much for spending time with us and the people through
Yeah.
ShapingEDU that are learning from the best people we know how to make it through a pandemic, survive, and come out looking good and doing something meaningful for our learners.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for inviting me.